Picture this: you're standing in the dim torchlight of a medieval castle's innermost chamber, the echoes of distant shouts and clanging swords growing louder by the second. The walls seem to press in around you as the reality sinks in. Your enemies have breached the gates, and there's no way out, or is there? With a single push against what appears to be solid stone, a hidden door swings open, revealing a narrow, winding passage carved deep into the earth. This isn't just a tunnel, it's a royal lifeline, engineered in secret to whisk kings and queens away from certain doom. For centuries, castles weren't just symbols of power, they were fortresses of last resorts, and their most brilliant defenses weren't towering walls or moats, but the invisible escape routes hidden in plain sight. These tunnels weren't built out of paranoia, they were born from necessity. Imagine the stakes: a single misstep in politics, a betrayal by a trusted ally, or an army too vast to repel could mean the end of a dynasty. So, the greatest minds of the medieval world devised solutions that bordered on genius. Some tunnels ran for miles, emerging in remote forests or quiet villages. Others dropped straight into riverbeds, allowing escapees to vanish underwater. And then there were the truly cunning ones: passages disguised as wine cellars, chapels, or even latrines, places no invader would think to search. But how did these architectural marvels stay hidden for so long? And what desperate moments unfolded within their shadows? Today, we're pulling back the curtain on 25 of history's most astonishing castle escape tunnels, each one a testament to human ingenuity and the relentless will to survive. From the claustrophobic corridors beneath England's most formidable strongholds to the sunken staircases of French chateaux, these stories reveal more than just engineering prowess. They uncover the raw, unfiltered drama of medieval life. You'll discover how a queen once fled through a tunnel lined with smuggled jewels, how a king's secret passage became the stuff of local legend, and why some of these routes remained undiscovered for hundreds of years. This isn't just a tour of ancient architecture. It's a journey into the minds of rulers who knew that sometimes the best way to win a war was to disappear. So, ready to step into the shadows, let's begin. To truly grasp the brilliance of these hidden passages, we need to step into the mindset of a medieval ruler. Castles weren't just homes, they were fortresses under constant threat, where a single traitor within the walls could mean disaster. Escape tunnels weren't optional luxuries, they were as vital as the castle's foundations. Think about the logistics. A siege could drag on for months, cutting off food, water, and hope. But a well-planned tunnel, it was a silent promise of survival, a way to slip past enemy lines under cover of darkness. And these routes weren't just dug haphazardly, they were feats of precision. Medieval engineers had no lasers or blueprints, just chisels, brute strength, and an intimate knowledge of stone. Some tunnels angled downward just enough to stay hidden beneath the earth, while others followed natural cave systems, disguising human handiwork with nature's chaos. But secrecy was everything. A single loose-lipped laborer could doom the entire project, so builders often worked in isolated teams, each unaware of the other's progress. Some tunnels were even constructed in segments, with only the royal family knowing the full route, and the disguises pure artistry. One famous passage in Bohemia was hidden behind a rotating fireplace, while a Scottish castle concealed its escape route beneath a chapel's altar, a place even the most ruthless invaders hesitated to desecrate. These weren't just holes in the ground, they were psychological masterstrokes, playing on the assumptions and superstitions of the time. The dual purpose of these tunnels adds another layer to their genius. Yes, they saved lives during sieges, but they also served as covert supply lines during peacetime, allowing food, weapons, or spies to move undetected. In Wales, a tunnel beneath Conwy Castle once smuggled in fresh troops during a rebellion, turning the tide of battle. And let's not forget the spies' messengers could dart in and out, gathering intelligence while enemies camped obliviously overhead. This versatility made tunnels indispensable, blending survival with strategy in a way that defined medieval rule. The next time you see a castle's towering walls, remember, the real marvels might be lurking beneath your feet, silent witnesses to centuries of cunning and desperation. The mastery of hiding these tunnels was nothing short of architectural deception. Builders didn't just carve passages, they crafted illusions, turning everyday castle features into covert escape hatches. Take the classic rotating bookcase, a staple of medieval libraries, yet when pulled a certain way, it revealed a gaping void behind the shelves. Or consider the false walls, constructed with such precision that even a close inspection wouldn't betray their secret. Some tunnels were buried beneath layers of deception, like those hidden under garden pathways, where the earth itself masked the hollow space below. Others exploited the sanctity of religious spaces. A chapel's altar might pivot on a hidden hinge, its sacred symbolism deterring invaders from prying too closely. But the real genius lay in the details. A well could double as an escape route, its shaft leading not to water, but to a tunnel snaking beneath the castle walls. Tapestries, heavy and ornate, often concealed narrow doorways, their fabric muffling the sound of movement behind them. And fireplaces, far from just warming a chamber, some were designed to swing outward, revealing a passage coated in soot, a disguise so effective, even the most thorough search parties might overlook it. The best tunnels didn't rely on a single trick. They had multiple exits, branching like a maze to baffle pursuers. One might lead to a stable, another to a riverside dock, ensuring that even if one route was discovered, others remained shrouded in secrecy. This level of concealment speaks volumes about the minds behind these designs. Medieval rulers didn't just fear invasion, they anticipated betrayal from within. A servant's whisper, a guard's drunken slip, even a visiting noble's curiosity could expose a tunnel's location. So builders worked in layers of misdirection. Some tunnels were constructed with decoy entrances, false doors that led to dead ends, wasting an enemy's time while the real passage lay elsewhere. Others incorporated natural features like caves or streams, blending human engineering with the landscape's chaos. The goal wasn't just to hide a route, it was to erase all evidence that it ever existed. And yet, despite their secrecy, these tunnels often bore the marks of their creators' personalities. One French chateau's escape route was hidden behind a wine cellar's barrels, a nod to the lord's notorious love of luxury. In Germany, a countess insisted her tunnel entrance be disguised as a linen closet, believing no soldier would waste time rummaging through bedsheets. These choices weren't just practical, they were psychological, playing on the biases and blind spots of the era. To walk these passages today is to step into a world where every stone could lie, and survival depended on outthinking the enemy in the most literal way possible. Now let's turn to our first stunning example, the Whispering Gallery of Castle Ehrenberg, where a seemingly ordinary corridor held a secret that saved a dynasty. The Château de Chinon's secret passage is the stuff of legend, a lifeline carved into stone during one of France's most turbulent eras. Picture King Charles VII, his crown weighing heavier than ever as English forces closed in during the 100 Years' War. The castle's towering walls, though formidable, couldn't guarantee safety, but beneath his very feet lay salvation, a tunnel so meticulously hidden that even the most determined invaders walked right past its entrance. Disguised as part of the chamber's stonework, a single panel could be shifted aside, revealing a narrow stairwell descending into darkness. This wasn't just a hole in the ground. It was a masterpiece of medieval engineering, its vaulted ceiling and reinforced walls designed to withstand centuries. What makes this tunnel extraordinary isn't just its construction, it's the sheer audacity of its design. The passage didn't just lead to some nearby cellar. It stretched all the way to a dense forest beyond the castle walls, a full escape route disguised as unyielding earth. Builders had to account for groundwater, unstable soil, and the constant risk of collapse, all without modern tools. Yet they succeeded, creating a path so secure that Charles used it multiple times, vanishing like a ghost whenever danger loomed. The tunnel's exit was equally cunning. Concealed among boulders and undergrowth, it allowed the king to emerge unnoticed, ready to regroup or rally allies. But this passage was more than a physical escape. It became a psychological weapon. When rumors spread that the king could disappear at will, it sowed doubt among his enemies. How could they capture a man who seemed to defy the very laws of nature? The tunnel's existence fueled French morale, transforming from a practical safeguard into a symbol of unbreakable defiance. Centuries later, archaeologists marveled at its precision, the way the stones fit together without mortar, how the gradient ensured quick drainage during rains. Even the air shafts, cleverly disguised as natural fissures, revealed a level of foresight that borders on prophetic. The Château de Chinon's secret didn't just save a king, it reshaped history. Without this hidden route, Charles might never have survived to unite France against English rule. And here's the twist: the tunnel's entrance wasn't rediscovered until the 19th century, hidden behind layers of plaster and neglect. It's a reminder that the greatest escapes aren't just about speed, they're about ingenuity, patience, and a willingness to outthink the impossible. Now, let's journey to a fortress where a queen's daring midnight flight through a tunnel became the stuff of ballads, proof that even the most desperate moments could inspire legends. Warwick Castle's dungeon hides a secret that blurs the line between prison and passageway, a tunnel so cleverly concealed that it turned captivity into a chance for freedom. Imagine the scene: a nobleman shackled and left to rot in the gloom, his fate seemingly sealed. But beneath the straw-strewn floor of his cell lay an ingenious escape hatch, masked by a layer of loose stones and dirt. With a few frantic scrapes, the prisoner could access a narrow shaft descending to the River Avon, where the current carried him beyond the castle's reach. This wasn't just a last-ditch effort. It was a meticulously planned loophole in the castle's own design, proof that even the most secure fortresses had their blind spots. What makes this tunnel remarkable isn't just its function, it's the sheer audacity of its location. Dungeons were meant to be the end of the road, places where hope went to die. Yet someone, perhaps a sympathetic builder or a forward-thinking lord, engineered an exit right under the guards' noses. The false floor was the masterstroke, heavy enough to deter casual inspection, yet movable with the right leverage. And the tunnel itself, carved at a steep angle to discourage pursuit, its walls slick with condensation, it was a gauntlet of desperation and determination. Historical records suggest this route wasn't common knowledge. Only a handful of prisoners ever discovered it, their escapes dismissed as sorcery or sheer luck. The dual purpose of Warwick's tunnel reveals a fascinating truth about medieval castles. Their defenses were as much about control as they were about contingency. While royalty used hidden passages to flee sieges, prisoners repurposed the same principles to defy their captors. This tunnel, likely built for supply deliveries or emergency exits, became a tool of rebellion in the right hands. Centuries later, workers restoring the dungeon stumbled upon the false floor, its mechanism still intact. The discovery sparked debates among historians. Was this an official escape route kept secret from lower-ranking guards, or an illicit project by prisoners who chipped away at the stone over years? Either way, it stands as a testament to human ingenuity in the face of oppression. Now, shift your gaze to a tunnel that didn't just defy enemies, it defied nature itself, carved through solid bedrock beneath a fortress perched on the edge of a cliff. Few escape routes in history played with nature's rhythms as brilliantly as the underwater tunnel of Mont Saint-Michel. Perched on a rocky island off France's coast, this fortress seemed impregnable until the tide rolled in, cutting it off from the mainland twice a day. But what appeared to be a vulnerability became its greatest weapon. Hidden beneath the swirling waters lay a passage accessible only during those fleeting hours when the sea retreated, its entrance disguised among the wet stones and seaweed. Imagine the scene. As enemy forces camped on the shore, waiting for the tide to drop, defenders could slip through this submerged corridor, their footsteps erased by the returning waves. By the time invaders reached the castle, their quarry had vanished without a trace, leaving only the ocean as their alibi. The engineering behind this tunnel was as precise as it was daring. Builders had to account not just for concealment, but for the relentless push and pull of the tides. The passage floor sloped upward just enough to drain seawater during low tide, while its arched ceiling resisted the crushing weight of high tide. Air shafts, cleverly camouflaged as natural crevices in the rock, prevented suffocation during use, but the true stroke of genius was its timing. Unlike other tunnels, which could be discovered and stormed at any moment, this one dictated its own schedule. Pursuers who tried to follow risked being caught mid-passage by the rising tide, their retreat cut off by the merciless sea. It was escape and trap woven into one. Mont Saint-Michel's tunnel also reveals how medieval architects turned geography into a co-conspirator. The island's very isolation, the thing that made it a fortress, also made it a prison during sieges. Yet this passage flipped the script, transforming the surrounding water from barrier to ally. Local fishermen, paid to keep silent, sometimes guided escapees through the tunnel's labyrinthine turns, their knowledge of the tides proving more valuable than swords. Over the centuries, the route saved everything from smuggled relics to fleeing nobles, its secrecy guarded by the ocean itself. Even today, with modern technology mapping every inch of the island, sections of the tunnel remain unexplored, their entrances lost to shifting sands and storms. This wasn't just an escape route, it was a lesson in patience and precision. One misstep, one delay, and the sea would claim its victims without mercy. Those who used it had to move with the rhythm of the moon, their freedom measured in the narrow window between tides. It's a reminder that the best defenses sometimes don't fight nature, they harness it. Now let's turn to a tunnel that served a far different purpose. Not for warriors or kings, but for a queen whose midnight flight would become the stuff of legend. Edinburgh Castle's secret passage holds the whispers of one of history's most dramatic escapes, Mary, Queen of Scots' desperate flight through solid rock. Picture the scene, spring of 1567, the young queen imprisoned in her own fortress, surrounded by rebellious lords who saw her throne as theirs for the taking. The castle's towering walls, once her protection, had become her cage, but beneath the royal chambers, a forgotten tunnel carved into the volcanic rock offered a glimmer of hope. Just wide enough for a single person to squeeze through, its jagged walls scraped against fabric and skin as Mary navigated the darkness, guided only by the flickering light of a smuggled torch. Every step risked discovery, one misplaced echo, one loose stone kicked in the blackness, and her fate would be sealed. This wasn't just a tunnel, it was a feat of medieval engineering tailored to desperation. The passage's entrance, concealed behind a false panel in the Queen's privy chamber, played on a universal taboo. No guard would willingly inspect such a private space too closely. Its winding path didn't follow a straight line but zigzagged downward, exploiting natural fissures in the castle rock to mask the sound of movement. At its lowest point, the ceiling dipped so sharply that escapees had to crawl, their backs scraping against stone, a deliberate design to deter armored pursuers. Emerging near the Nor Loch, now Edinburgh's Prince's Street Gardens, the tunnel spat Mary into the arms of waiting loyalists who whisked her away to temporary safety. What makes this escape extraordinary isn't just its audacity, but its legacy. For centuries, the tunnel's existence was dismissed as romantic legend until renovations in the 1800s uncovered the hollowed-out path, its walls still bearing scorch marks from torches. Archaeologists found fragments of silk thread and a single pearl earring tantalizing hints of Mary's frantic passage. The tunnel's rediscovery rewrote local lore, proving that even the most outlandish stories often hold kernels of truth. But here's the twist. Some historians argue the route wasn't built for Mary at all. Evidence suggests it may have been crafted decades earlier for James II after his father's murder, making it a recycled lifeline for doomed royalty. Mary's flight through that tunnel marked a turning point not just for her turbulent reign, but for how castles balanced grandeur with vulnerability. A queen's chambers, meant to symbolize power, became her prison, while the humblest of spaces, a privy, became her salvation. It's a reminder that in medieval Europe, survival often depended on the secrets beneath your feet. Now, let's turn to a tunnel designed not for escape, but for a king's final, unthinkable act, a passage where surrender wasn't an option, and disappearance was the only victory. Windsor Castle's so-called King's Bolt Hole wasn't just an escape route. It was a testament to Henry VIII's paranoia, and with good reason. By the 1530s, England was a powder keg of religious upheaval and political betrayal, and the king who'd broken with Rome knew his throne balanced on a knife's edge. His solution, a tunnel so discreet that even the castle's own guards were kept in the dark. Hidden behind an embroidered tapestry in the royal bedchamber, a scene of hunting hounds cleverly masking the seam, the entrance swung open to reveal a spiraling stairwell plunging into the earth. The walls, lined with niches for torches, were just wide enough for a broad-shouldered monarch in full regalia to descend without losing his dignity. But the true brilliance lay in the tunnel's path. Unlike straight-shot passages, this one zigzagged beneath the castle's outer wards, its turns designed to muffle sound and confuse pursuers. At its lowest point, the ceiling dipped abruptly, forcing escapees to crouch, a deliberate inconvenience for armored attackers, but a minor hurdle for a king in a hurry. Emerging near the Thames, the exit was disguised as a riverside boathouse where a pre-positioned skiff could ferry Henry to safety. Records suggest the tunnel was tested at least once during the Pilgrimage of Grace Rebellion, when whispers of a mob storming Windsor sent the king's attendants scrambling to prepare the route. What's fascinating isn't just the engineering, it's the psychology behind its secrecy. Only 3 people outside the royal family knew the tunnel's full path: Henry's master mason, his most trusted bodyguard, and the boatman sworn to silence on pain of death. Even the workers who built it were kept compartmentalized. One team carved the upper stairs, another the middle passages, and a third the river exit, with none knowing how their sections connected. This paranoia paid off. For 3 centuries, the tunnel's existence faded into rumor until a 19th-century plumber, repairing a leak in the castle's foundation, knocked loose a hollow-sounding stone. Behind it lay a cobweb-choked passage still smelling of pitch from long-extinguished torches. The discovery revealed something unexpected. the tunnel hadn't been abandoned after Henry's death. Scorch marks along the walls dated to the English Civil War, suggesting Charles I might have used it during his own desperate bid to evade Parliament's forces. It's a chilling reminder that escape tunnels weren't just architectural feats, they were dynastic lifelines, reused across generations when crowns hung in the balance. Now, let's turn to a fortress where a tunnel didn't just save lives but decided the outcome of a siege that changed the course of a nation. The siege of Carcasson during the Albigensian Crusade wasn't just a battle, it was a high-stakes game of cat and mouse, and the city's hidden tunnel became its winning move. Picture the scene, summer of 1209, the fortress surrounded by Crusader forces, its wells running dry under the scorching sun. The walls, though formidable, couldn't hold forever against starvation. But beneath the besiegers' feet, something extraordinary was unfolding. A tunnel, its entrance masterfully blended into the stonework of the inner ramparts, allowed defenders to slip out under cover of darkness, their movements masked by the chaos of siege engines and shouted orders. This wasn't just an escape route, it was a lifeline threading through the earth like a secret pulse keeping the city alive. What set Carcassonne's tunnel apart was its dual purpose. While most escape passages prioritized flight, this one became a supply line, smuggling in food, weapons, and even reinforcements from sympathetic villages. The entrance's camouflage was pure genius, a section of wall that appeared seamless until specific stones were removed in a precise sequence. By day, laborers would replace these stones, leaving no trace of the night's activities. The tunnel's path exploited natural fissures in the bedrock, minimizing digging noise that might alert the enemy, and its exit, a half-collapsed shepherd's hut well beyond the Crusaders' patrols, its rotting timbers hiding the earth's secret. For months, this hidden artery sustained Carcasson, turning what should have been a swift surrender into a grinding stalemate. The Crusaders, confident their blockade was airtight, grew increasingly baffled by the defenders' endurance. Rumors spread of divine intervention or secret pacts with local farmers, anything to explain the impossible. Meanwhile, the tunnel's users developed a system of coded knocks and torch signals to coordinate movements, their operations timed to the changing of guard shifts. The real stroke of brilliance, though, came when the tunnel wasn't just used for supplies. On a moonless night, a band of Occitan knights slipped through it to launch a surprise attack on the Crusaders' rear, sowing confusion that bought the city critical extra weeks. The tunnel's legacy endures not just in stone, but in the lessons it taught medieval strategists. Its existence proved that a fortress's strength wasn't just in its walls, but in its ability to control information. While Crusader commanders focused on the visible, the gates, the towers, the dwindling smoke from cooking fires, Carcassonne's defenders were rewriting the rules of siege warfare beneath their feet. Today, visitors can still see the tunnel's entrance, its disguised stones now marked by subtle brass plaques. Running a hand along those ancient grooves, you can almost feel the desperation and ingenuity they represent. The unyielding will to outthink, outlast, and survive. Now let's unravel the mystery of a tunnel that didn't just save lives, it swallowed them whole, leaving behind a disappearance that still puzzles historians centuries later. Bran Castle's secret tunnel doesn't just wind through stone, it winds through time, carrying whispers of one of history's most infamous figures. Vlad III, better known as Vlad the Impaler, didn't just rule Wallachia with an iron fist, he mastered the art of vanishing when the tides turned against him. Passage hidden beneath the castle chapel is a masterclass in psychological warfare. Imagine his enemies storming the gates, only to find the throne room empty, the hearth still warm, and no trace of the man they'd come to capture. The tunnel's entrance, concealed behind a hinged altar, led not to some nearby village but into the heart of the Carpathian Mountains, a labyrinth of caves and forests where Vlad could disappear for weeks. What makes this tunnel legendary isn't just its association with Dracula's real-life inspiration, it's how perfectly it played into Vlad's reputation. The route was deliberately uneven, its walls jagged and slick with moisture, forcing pursuers to move slowly while Vlad, familiar with every turn, could flee at a sprint. Local lore claims he'd leave gruesome markers along the path, the bodies of traitors or impaled prisoners, a grisly breadcrumb trail to discourage followers. But the true stroke of genius was the tunnel's exit. Emerging near a mountain spring, it allowed Vlad to double back along hidden game trails or melt into the nomadic communities who owed him allegiance. By the time his enemies realized the tunnel existed, he'd already reappeared miles away, rallying fresh troops as if resurrected from the earth itself. Centuries later, the tunnel's legacy lingers in the uncanny details. Visitors report a sudden drop in temperature as they descend, their breath visible even in summer. Some claim to hear faint echoes not of footsteps, but of something being dragged, a chilling nod to Vlad's preferred method of execution. Archaeologists have found evidence of torch brackets spaced at irregular intervals, suggesting the route was designed to disorient. And then there's the curious case of the vanishing drafts, pockets of air that extinguish candles without warning, as if the tunnel itself rejects light. Whether superstition or clever engineering, the effect is the same, a palpable sense that history here isn't just studied but felt. The tunnel's most enduring mystery, though, is whether Vlad staged his final disappearance using this very route. Historical records show he was killed in battle near Bucharest in 1476, his head sent to Constantinople as proof, but folk tales insist the body was a decoy, that the real Vlad slipped away through Bran's hidden passage, living out his days in a remote mountain stronghold. The truth may never be known, but the tunnel's existence fuels the legend. After all, for a ruler who turned fear into a weapon, what better legacy than a vanishing act so perfect? It still captivates us today. Now, turn the page to a very different kind of escape, one that traded darkness for diplomacy, where a royal family's survival hinged on a tunnel disguised as a wine cellar's humble brickwork. The Hohenzollern Castle Tunnel is a masterclass in patience, proof that medieval rulers played the long game when it came to survival. Picture a moonless night in 1525, the castle's halls echoing with the clash of swords as rebellious knights breached the gates. While chaos erupted above, the royal family moved with chilling precision. A tapestry in the Great Hall, woven with the family's heraldic eagle, concealed more than just stone. It hid a narrow doorway leading to a staircase spiraling into the earth. What followed wasn't just an escape, it was a journey through darkness so absolute, the only light came from the trembling glow of oil-soaked rags wrapped around hastily grabbed torches. What makes this tunnel extraordinary isn't just its length, carved through nearly 2 miles of solid Swabian Alps bedrock, but the sheer audacity of its construction. Workers chiseled away in secret for over 30 years, their progress measured in inches per month. The passage wasn't straight, it zigzagged to follow natural fault lines in the rock, reducing the risk of collapse while amplifying the echoes of approaching footsteps. Every twist served a purpose. One section narrowed abruptly, forcing pursuers to crawl single file, while another included a false floor that dropped into a pit of loose shale, a trap for anyone who didn't know the exact path. The exit, a moss-covered outcrop in the Byzantian woods, its opening disguised as a fallen tree's root system, but the true genius lay in the tunnel's secrecy. Only 3 generations of Hohenzollerns knew its full route, passing the knowledge orally on their deathbeds. Even the castle's steward, who oversaw its construction, was deliberately misled about the final exit's location. This obsession with discretion paid off spectacularly during the Peasants' Revolt, when rebels ransacked the castle for days, convinced the family was hiding in a secret chamber. By the time they gave up, the Hohenzollerns were already across the Swiss border, their wealth smuggled out through the tunnel in small, nightly trips weeks before the uprising. The tunnel's legacy endures in the family's rise to power. Unlike other dynasties that collapsed under rebellion, the Hohenzollerns survived to rule Prussia and later a unified Germany for centuries. Historians argue this escape route wasn't just a physical passage. It symbolized the family's knack for endurance, their ability to vanish when the storm hit and return when the skies cleared. Today, visitors can still see the tunnel's entrance, the tapestry long gone but the stone frame worn smooth by centuries of clandestine touches. It's a silent testament to the fact that sometimes the greatest power isn't in standing your ground, but in knowing exactly when and how to disappear. Now let's turn to a tunnel that defied not just enemies but physics itself, a passage so ingeniously hidden it remained undiscovered until a modern-day gardener's shovel struck hollow stone. Heimgy Castle's hidden tunnel isn't just a passage, it's a silent witness to one of Japan's most pivotal moments, where survival hinged on cherry blossoms and clever acoustics. During the bloody Sengoku period, as rival warlords clashed for control, this fortress's white-plastered walls stood as both a target and a sanctuary. Beneath its meticulously raked gravel gardens, a tunnel snaked toward distant mountains, its entrance concealed beneath a stone lantern that could be pivoted aside with a precise twist. But what truly set this escape route apart wasn't just its invisibility, it was its near-silent operation. The walls were lined with layers of compacted earth mixed with crushed seashells, a technique borrowed from temple builders to absorb footsteps and muffled voices. Even the wooden support beams were wrapped in rice straw, eliminating the creaks that might betray movement below ground. The tunnel's users faced more than just the threat of pursuit. They navigated a gauntlet of psychological warfare. As the ruling Akamatsu family fled during the night of the castle's fall, they moved through total darkness, their path illuminated only by bioluminescent fungi cultured in recessed niches, a natural light source that wouldn't flicker like torches and reveal their position. Every 20 paces, the tunnel branched briefly into dead-end alcoves, forcing pursuers to gamble on the correct path, while the fleeing family followed subtle carvings of cranes, their heraldic symbol pointing the true way. Emerging near a Shinto shrine miles away, the tunnel's exit was camouflaged as a water runoff channel, its stonework stained to mimic decades of weather stains. Centuries later, archaeologists uncovered the tunnel intact, a rarity in earthquake-prone Japan. The discovery confirmed a local legend about a ghost procession witnessed by farmers the night the castle fell. Even more astonishing, the tunnel's sound-dampening technology still worked. Researchers found that voices carried no further than 3 meters inside. But the real revelation came from a bundle of letters hidden in a hollowed-out step, detailing the family's plan to regroup with allies. These fragile papers, preserved by the tunnel's constant humidity, rewrote historians' understanding of the clan's resilience. They didn't just escape, they orchestrated their resurgence from the shadows, turning a military defeat into a dynasty's rebirth. Now, prepare for a tunnel that served a far darker purpose, one where escape wasn't about survival, but something far more chilling. Malbork Castle's tunnel tells a story not of triumph, but of chilling miscalculation, proof that even the most carefully laid escape plans could unravel in an instant. In the bitter winter of 1454, as Polish forces tightened their siege around the Teutonic Knights' greatest stronghold, the Order's Grand Master made his move. The tunnel, carved over decades beneath the castle's chapel, was their ace in the hole, a quarter-mile passage emerging near the Nogat River where loyalists waited with boats. But as the knights filed through that narrow, torchlit darkness, something went horribly wrong. Whether by betrayal or sheer bad luck, Polish scouts had discovered the exit hours earlier. As the first knights emerged into the freezing night, they were met not with salvation but with a wall of archers and pikes. What makes this tunnel unique isn't its engineering. It was masterfully constructed with a vaulted brick ceiling to prevent collapse, but the haunting evidence left behind. Archaeologists found the passage littered with artifacts dropped in the chaos. A silver cross still threaded on its chain, a gauntlet wedged between stones where its owner had tried to scramble back, even the skeletal remains of those who'd been trampled in the panicked retreat. The tunnel's design, which initially seemed brilliant, became its user's undoing. The single file width that prevented detection also trapped them when the ambush came, turning the passage into a slaughterhouse. Polish chronicles describe the river running red for days, the bodies left as a warning against further escape attempts. This tragedy reveals a harsh truth about medieval warfare. No secret remained safe forever. Malbork's tunnel had been used successfully for generations, its existence known only to the highest-ranking knights. But the longer a passage served, the greater the risk of betrayal or discovery. Some historians speculate a disgruntled servant sold the secret. Others believe the Polish simply noticed Patton's guards disappearing near the chapel at certain hours, or the unusual lack of snowmelt over the tunnel's buried vents. Whatever the case, the lesson was clear. Tunnels weren't foolproof. They required constant vigilance, alternate routes, and above all, the willingness to abandon them when compromised, something the proud Teutonic Knights learned too late. Today, visitors can walk the tunnel's remains, its walls still scarred by sword strikes where the trapped knights made their last stand, the most poignant detail. A series of carved crosses near the entrance, not medieval, but left by modern pilgrims honoring those who died in darkness. It's a reminder that these passages weren't just strategic tools, they were the setting for very human moments of courage and despair. Now prepare for a tunnel where legend and history blur, a passage said to be guarded not by soldiers, but by something far more mysterious. Przejoma Castle's tunnel isn't just an escape route. It's a natural labyrinth turned into a medieval game of cat and mouse, with a rebellious knight always one step ahead. Perched dramatically in the mouth of a Slovenian cliffside, the castle's hidden passage blended seamlessly with the karst caves behind it, creating a maze so vast that Erasm Luja, the castle's infamous occupant, could vanish for months at a time. Picture the frustration of his besiegers. No matter how tightly they encircled the castle, Erasm would reappear, taunting them with fresh cherries tossed over the walls, proof he'd slipped out to replenish supplies through his underground network. The tunnel's entrance, hidden behind a false wall in the castle's storeroom, dropped steeply into the caves below, where stalactites and winding passages offered endless diversion routes. What set this escape apart wasn't just the geography, it was Erasm's flair for psychological warfare. He'd stage mock banquets in the castle hall while secretly funneling food through the tunnel, making it seem like he had supernatural reserves. The caves themselves became his allies. Some passages led to hidden exits in nearby forests, while others opened onto sheer cliff faces, accessible only to those who knew the exact footholds. Local farmers loyal to Erasm would leave provisions in designated caverns, their complicity masked by the natural echoes that distorted sound and confused pursuers. Even the tunnel's construction played tricks. Sections widened abruptly into cathedral-like chambers, only to narrow to a crawl space, forcing armored soldiers to abandon their gear if they dared follow. The tunnel's legacy lies in its defiance of conventional siege tactics. For over a year, Erasmus outmaneuvered the Habsburg forces sent to capture him, turning the caves into a stage for his rebellion. His eventual downfall came not from the tunnel's failure, but from Betrayal. A servant marked the castle's privy with a lantern, revealing the spot where Erasmus sat vulnerable during a moment of routine. The cannonball that found him may have ended the legend, but the tunnel's reputation only grew. Today, visitors can still explore sections of the passage, their footsteps echoing where a knight once turned geology into guerrilla warfare. The walls, polished smooth by centuries of curious hands, whisper of a time when the earth itself became a weapon. Now shift your gaze from rebellion to romance, a tunnel where love, not war, wrote the final chapter. Beneath Germany's Heidelberg Castle, a passageway steeped in legend tells the story of a prince's forbidden affair. Unlike the rough-hewn escape routes of besieged fortresses, this one was lined with velvet drapes and lit by silver lanterns, a secret highway for midnight rendezvous. The entrance, concealed behind a false bookcase in the prince's library, spiraled down to a riverside grotto where his beloved waited. But this wasn't just a lover's lane, it was a carefully guarded secret, its existence known only to the couple and a single mute servant who maintained the route. The tunnel's design reveals a different kind of desperation. While most escape passages prioritized speed and concealment, this one embraced indulgence. Cork-lined walls muffled footsteps, and a hidden alcove held a chilled wine cabinet for stolen moments. The prince, a keen student of architecture, borrowed techniques from Italian opera houses to ensure sound wouldn't carry up the staircase. But the true stroke of genius was the exit, a boathouse disguised as a crumbling ruin, its rotting timbers hiding a sleek skiff ready to whisk the lovers down the Neckar River at dawn. When their affair was finally discovered, the tunnel became their salvation, not from swords, but from scandal. Unlike Erasmus's confrontational theatrics, this passage served whispers and longing, proving that castles held secrets far more intimate than war. Heidelberg's tunnel, now partially restored, still exudes romance. Visitors note the faint scent of rose oil lingering in the stone, whether from modern preservation or centuries-old perfume, no one can say. But the lesson endures. Sometimes the most daring escapes aren't about survival, but the heart's unyielding defiance. Chenonceau Castle's gallery hides more than just Renaissance elegance. It conceals a tunnel steeped in scandal, where stone walls once muffled the whispers of a king's forbidden love. Unlike the claustrophobic escape routes of besieged fortresses, this passage was a masterpiece of discretion, its entrance seamlessly blended into the ornate paneling of the grand hall. A single carved rose, indistinguishable from the surrounding decor, could be pressed to release a hidden latch, swinging open a section of wall just wide enough for two figures to slip through unseen. Beyond lay a vaulted corridor lined with tapestries that absorbed sound, leading to a moonlit pavilion nestled in the castle's private gardens, a rendezvous point for King Henry II and Diane de Poitiers, his most infamous mistress. The tunnel's design reveals a different kind of ingenuity. While most secret passages prioritized utility, this one embraced luxury. Crystal sconces filled not with smoky torches but beeswax candles lit the way without leaving telltale soot stains. The floor, inlaid with cork beneath the tiles, silenced footsteps, while strategically placed air vents carried away perfume or voices that might betray the lovers. Even the pavilion at the tunnel's end was an architectural sleight of hand. Its latticed windows offered sweeping views of the Cher River, but angled louvers ensured no prying eyes could peer in from the opposite bank. For nearly a decade, this hidden route shielded the affair from Queen Catherine de' Medici, whose own apartments lay just above the gallery, oblivious to the drama unfolding beneath her feet. When the tunnel was rediscovered during 19th-century renovations, workers uncovered more than just brick and mortar. Tucked into a crevice near the pavilion entrance was a gold locket containing a miniature portrait of Diane, her face framed by the king's initials entwined with hers. The discovery peeled back centuries of courtly decorum, exposing the raw humanity behind Chenonceau's polished facade. Historians now believe the tunnel wasn't just a love nest, it was a political lifeline. Diane, 20 years Henry's senior, wielded immense influence, and their clandestine meetings likely shaped royal policy away from the Queen's faction. The pavilion's shelves still bear faint impressions where ledgers and maps once lay, hinting at hushed discussions that altered the course of France. What makes this tunnel extraordinary isn't just its craftsmanship, it's how it reflects the duality of power. The same king who commissioned this delicate passage also fortified cities and waged wars, yet here he relied on whispers and hidden doors. Chenonceau's tunnel reminds us that castles weren't just stages for battles and sieges. They were canvases for private passions, where even monarchs carved out secret spaces to be something more or less than royalty. Now turn to a passage built not for lovers or warriors, but for a boy king whose survival depended on outwitting those who sought to control him. Stirling Castle's nursery holds a secret far darker than fairy tales, a narrow, low-ceilinged tunnel where a boy king once crawled to freedom. James V was just a year old when he inherited Scotland's throne, his childhood becoming a battleground for warring regents who saw him as a pawn. The passage, concealed beneath a trapdoor hidden under woven rushes, was sized for small limbs and desperate urgency. Imagine the scene, torchlight flickering against damp stone as the child monarch, bundled in plain woolen clothes, was hurried through the suffocating darkness by a handful of loyal servants. The tunnel's walls, carved just wide enough for a child's shoulders, forced adults to crawl on hands and knees, an intentional design to slow pursuers while the king could scamper ahead like a frightened hare. Emerging near the Church of the Holy Rood, the passage delivered James into the care of sympathetic clergy who sheltered him until allies could regroup. What makes this tunnel haunting isn't its engineering, but its very existence. Unlike passages built for grown rulers facing sieges, this one whispers of a more intimate terror, a child fleeing his own court. The walls still bear scratch marks at knee height, likely from frantic escapes. Historians believe the tunnel was used multiple times between 1513 and 1528, as rival factions alternately captured and lost control of the king. Each flight reinforced a brutal lesson. James couldn't trust the very walls meant to protect him. The nursery, traditionally a place of safety, became a gilded cage with a secret exit. The tunnel's legacy lingers in Scotland's collective memory. Folk songs describe the Wee King's Road, where spiders supposedly spun protective webs across the entrance to hide it from searching soldiers. A poetic nod to the servants who meticulously replaced the rushes after each use. Modern archaeologists made a chilling discovery: child-sized fingerprints preserved in clay lining one section of the passage, perhaps left when James braced himself during a particularly harried escape. These fragile traces remind us that behind the grand narratives of medieval politics were real children thrust into unthinkable circumstances, yet the tunnel also speaks to resilience. James eventually outmaneuvered his regents, using the same knack for secrecy honed in those dark passages to consolidate power as an adult. His reign saw Stirling's defenses strengthened, but significantly, the nursery tunnel was never sealed. Perhaps he kept it as a reminder or a warning. Now, brace for a tunnel where the stakes weren't just power, but pure survival, as a besieged garrison turned to a most unexpected escape route: the castle's own latrines. Dover Castle's siege breaker tunnel wasn't just an escape route, it was a weapon carved into the earth, a masterstroke of medieval audacity that rewrote the rules of siege warfare. Picture the year 1216, the castle's defenders exhausted after months of enduring relentless assaults from Prince Louis of France's forces. Food stores dwindled, morale frayed, and the walls trembled under bombardment. But beneath the chaos, something extraordinary was unfolding. A hand-picked team of miners, their work muffled by the constant din of siege engines, had spent weeks chiseling a narrow passage through the chalk bedrock. Unlike other tunnels designed for stealthy flight, this one had a far bolder purpose. It emerged like a dagger thrust behind the French encampments, allowing the defenders to turn the tables in a single, brutal night. The genius of Dover's tunnel lay in its precision. Engineers calculated its length to the foot, ensuring it exited just beyond the enemy's watchfires but close enough for a rapid assault. The walls were shored up with timber soaked in vinegar, a trick to prevent creaking, and the floor sloped imperceptibly downward to mask any stray sounds of movement. When the moment came, the tunnel didn't just disgorge soldiers, it unleashed chaos. Archers emerged first, picking off sentries with silent efficiency before the main force surged forward, torching supply wagons and cutting down half-asleep combatants. The French, convinced the castle was on the brink of surrender, found themselves encircled by an enemy they'd thought trapped. By dawn, the siege lines were in shambles, and Prince Louis's campaign never recovered. But the tunnel's true brilliance was its aftermath. Rather than collapsing the passage, the English garrison repurposed it as a psychological weapon. They allowed rumors to spread among captured French soldiers tales of underground networks spiderwebbing beneath the entire countryside, of English troops who could materialize anywhere. The effect was devastating. Morale among the besiegers crumbled faster than their supply lines, proving that sometimes the mere suggestion of hidden power could be more potent than the tunnel itself. Today, visitors can still trace the tunnel's outline, its chalk walls bearing the pick marks of those long-ago miners. Archaeologists discovered something haunting near its exit, a single rusted dagger embedded in the stone at chest height, likely left as a makeshift bracket for a lantern during the assault. It's a silent testament to the men who turned desperation into victory, rewriting the fate of a castle and a nation, with nothing but grit and a shadowy passage through stone. Now prepare for a tunnel where history blurs with legend, and the stones themselves seem to whisper warnings, a passage said to be guarded not by soldiers, but by something far older and more unsettling. Leap Castle's tunnel isn't just a passage, it's a throat of shadows where history and horror intertwine. Hidden behind a deceptively simple priest hole, this narrow corridor in Ireland's most haunted castle was carved not for royalty, but for clergymen fleeing Tudor persecution. Picture the scene, a hunted priest, his breath ragged as he squeezed through the hidden panel, groping blindly through the pitch-black tunnel while soldiers ransacked the rooms above. But for many, this promised escape became a tomb. The passage walls, uneven and slick with damp, concealed deadly drop-offs and dead ends, traps meant to confound pursuers that instead claimed countless lives. Visitors today report an unnatural chill near the entrance, as if the stones themselves remember the terror of those who vanished within. What chills most isn't the ghost stories, it's the forensic evidence. During renovations in the early 20th century, workers uncovered a grisly find, skeletal remains wedged into crevices, some still clutching rusted daggers or rosary beads. These weren't orderly burials, but bodies left where they fell, their final moments frozen in desperate contortions. The tunnel's design reveals its cruel duality. While the O'Carroll clan who built it advertised it as sanctuary during anti-Catholic purges, its labyrinthine branches suggest darker intentions. Some historians believe certain offshoots were deliberate death traps, either to weed out untrustworthy escapees or to dispose of prisoners discreetly. The infamous Bloody Chapel above the tunnel adds weight to this theory. Its floor gratings allowed sounds and perhaps more to filter down into the passage below. Yet the tunnel's true power lies in its lingering echoes. Modern paranormal investigators have recorded disjointed whispers in Elizabethan English and Latin prayers, never loud enough to decipher, but unmistakably human. Thermal scans show cold spots moving against airflow, as if unseen figures still hurry through. Even skeptics can't dismiss the psychological weight of the place. The act of crawling through that claustrophobic darkness, knowing how many never emerged, triggers a primal dread no historian can fully explain. Leap's tunnel isn't just a relic of persecution. It's a mirror to the era's brutality, where faith and survival collided in the tightest of spaces. Now, shift from spectral horrors to cold calculation, a tunnel where espionage, not escape, was the ultimate goal. Beneath Prague's Hradčany Palace, a passage known as the Spymaster's Vein twists toward the Vltava River, its walls lined with hollow niches perfect for concealing stolen documents or listening to conversations above. Unlike Leap's chaotic darkness, this tunnel was a precision instrument. Built for Emperor Rudolph II's intelligence network, its smooth plaster walls absorbed sound while concealed peepholes offered views into key chambers. The entrance, disguised as a wine cellar's back shelf, required a specific sequence of removed bottles to trigger the mechanism, a safeguard against unauthorized use. Couriers could traverse the tunnel's quarter-mile length in under 10 minutes, emerging at a riverside boathouse where coded messages were passed via harmless-looking fishing boats. But the real stroke of genius, the tunnel's slight curve, which prevented anyone from seeing light at either end, making it impossible to gauge its true length or direction. Modern restorers found evidence of even subtler tricks: copper wires embedded in the ceiling to detect vibrations from footsteps above, and a side chamber stocked with ink and parchment for last-minute forgeries. This wasn't just a hidden route, it was an invisible nerve center of an empire's secrets, proving that some tunnels didn't save lives, they stole truth. Beneath the legendary Blarney Stone, where tourists now bend backwards for the gift of gab, lies a far older secret, a tunnel that once turned whispers into weapons. Blarney Castle's hidden passage wasn't built for fleeing nobles but for a master spy who played both sides during Ireland's turbulent rebellions. The entrance, concealed behind a movable section of the stone's foundation, dropped into a narrow shaft lined with sound-absorbing moss. Unlike the rough-hewn escape routes of other castles, this one was precision-engineered for silence, each step cushioned by layers of packed wool, each turning point angled to deflect echoes. At its height, the tunnel saw coded messages ferried to the River Martin, where they vanished into the hands of waiting couriers disguised as fishermen. The spy who frequented this route, known in court records only as the Raven, left no portraits or personal effects, just a trail of strategic victories credited to his intelligence. Local lore claims he once slipped an entire company of rebel archers through the tunnel under cover of a feast's fireworks, their bowstrings wrapped in cloth to mute the telltale twang. But the tunnel's true genius lay in its deniability. For centuries, officials dismissed rumors of its existence, attributing the Raven's uncanny knowledge to sorcery or luck. Even the castle's caretakers were kept in the dark. Only 3 generations of the McCarthy family knew the full route, passing the secret through a rhyming cipher sung as a lullaby. Modern archaeologists uncovered the truth during repairs to the stone's support structure. Beneath the tourist attraction's steel railings, they found not just a tunnel, but an espionage toolkit frozen in time, a hollowed-out quill for hiding messages, a set of bone dice marked with cipher symbols, and most telling, a small mirror polished to shine signals across the river. The walls bore grooves where ropes had once lowered bundles to boats below, confirming the tunnel's role as a clandestine supply line. But the real revelation came from carbon-dated wine stains on the floor, traces of a celebratory toast left by the Raven's handlers after a particularly daring operation. This passage rewrites our understanding of medieval spycraft. Where other tunnels prioritized speed or concealment, Blarney's was a study in psychological warfare. Its very improbability hiding in plain sight beneath one of Ireland's most visited landmarks became its greatest asset. The Raven didn't just move through stone, he manipulated perception, letting superstition and spectacle cloak his movements. Today, visitors who kiss the Blarney Stone unknowingly lean over a masterclass in deception, where the real gift wasn't eloquence, but the art of vanishing in a crowded room. Now prepare for a passage where stealth gave way to sheer audacity, a tunnel that didn't just conceal a queen but staged her resurrection. Bamberg Castle's hidden tunnel wasn't just an escape route, it was the thread that saved a dynasty. Picture the year 1461, the castle under siege by Yorkist forces, its gates shuddering under the assault, while inside, Queen Margaret of Anjou faced an impossible choice. With her husband, King Henry VI, imprisoned and her son's claim to the throne hanging by a thread, surrender wasn't an option, but beneath the chaos, a lifeline waited. The tunnel, concealed beneath the castle's granary, was a masterpiece of misdirection. Its entrance, disguised as a storage alcove for sacks of grain, could only be opened by removing 3 specific stones in sequence, a trick known only to the royal family and their most trusted steward. The passage itself was a study in desperation, narrow enough that Margaret had to turn sideways while clutching her young son's hand. Its walls were slick with salt spray from the North Sea just beyond. Torchlight revealed grooves worn into the stone where countless hands had braced during previous escapes, a silent testament to Bamberg's turbulent history. But this time the stakes were higher. As the Queen hurried through the darkness, the tunnel's exit, a crumbling seawall obscured by tidal pools, delivered her to a fishing cobble bobbing in the surf. Its crew, loyal Lancastrians disguised as common sailors, rowed furiously toward a waiting French galley, their oars muffled by the crashing waves. By the time the Yorkists breached the castle, Margaret and her son were already vanishing into the mist, their survival ensuring the Lancastrian cause lived on. Centuries later, archaeologists uncovered the tunnel during a routine survey of the castle's foundations. Beneath layers of silt and collapsed stone, they found artifacts frozen in time, a child's leather shoe, its stitching frayed from frantic movement, and a gold pendant bearing the Lancastrian emblem, likely torn free in the scramble. These weren't just relics, they were proof of a legend long dismissed as romantic fiction. Local tales had spoken of a ghostly queen, glimpsed near the seawall during storms, her spectral figure clutching a boy's hand. The discovery confirmed what history had whispered. Sometimes the most improbable escapes weren't just stories, but carefully guarded secrets. What makes this tunnel extraordinary isn't just its role in saving a queen, it's how it reflects the razor's edge of medieval power. Margaret's escape didn't just preserve her family, it prolonged the Wars of the Roses, buying the Lancastrians critical months to regroup. The tunnel's design reveals this calculated foresight. Unlike hasty escape routes, this one had been maintained for generations, with hidden niches stocked with fresh torches and even a diverted freshwater spring to sustain fugitives. Its builders understood that survival wasn't about brute strength, but patience and preparation. When the moment came, a handful of seconds and a handful of stones made the difference between a dynasty's end and its second act. Now turn to a tunnel where survival was betrayed from within, a passage that promised salvation but delivered treachery. Deep beneath the walls of Shaytau de Chinon, a nobleman's trusted advisor revealed a secret route to invading forces, turning a lifeline into a death trap. The stones here tell a darker tale, not of escape but of trust broken and the price of misplaced loyalty. Caerphilly Castle's tunnel should have been a lifeline instead. It became a wound carved into Welsh history. Hidden beneath the massive gatehouse, this passage was designed to funnel defenders during emergencies, its narrow walls forcing attackers into vulnerable single-file lines. But in 1282, the stones themselves seemed to turn traitor. A disgruntled Welsh nobleman, his name lost to time but his betrayal etched in blood, led English forces through the secret route under cover of darkness. The invaders didn't just bypass Caerphilly's famed concentric walls, they slithered through its very heart like poison through veins. By dawn, the castle's defenses were unraveling from within, its courtyards choked with smoke and the clang of swords where none should have reached. The tunnel's design made the betrayal even more devastating. Unlike straight escape passages, this one twisted deliberately to confuse outsiders, yet the traitor knew every turn. Torch brackets were spaced unevenly to disorient unfamiliar users, but the conspirators moved with chilling precision. Archaeologists later found evidence of the night's chaos, a rusted grappling hook still embedded where it had been used to silence a sentry, and grooves in the stone floor from dragged bodies. The castle fell faster than any siege could have achieved, proving that no wall was impenetrable when trust crumbled first. What lingers today isn't just the tunnel's physical remains, it's the lesson etched into Caerphilly's story. After recapturing the fortress, Welsh rulers sealed the passage with rubble and iron spikes, but they took a more haunting precaution. The traitor's family name was systematically erased from records, his lineage dissolved like salt in rain. Visitors now walk the gatehouse unknowingly over that buried shame, where grass grows thicker along the tunnel's buried path, as if the earth itself tries to heal the scar. This tunnel forces us to confront a darker truth about medieval warfare. Sometimes, the greatest threats didn't scale the walls, they already stood inside them. Now brace for a passage where no betrayal could shift the tide, a tunnel built not for escape, but for a doomed king's final, defiant act. Corfe Castle's final tunnel isn't just an escape route, it's a scar left by one of England's most brutal sieges, where survival meant clawing through stone with bare hands. Picture the scene, March of 1646, the castle's mighty walls reduced to smouldering rubble by Parliament's cannons, its royalist defenders cornered like foxes in a burning den. Yet beneath the chaos, a dozen men worked feverishly, not to fight but to dig. Their tools, broken swords, cooking pots, anything that could scrape away at the fractured chalk bedrock. The tunnel they carved wasn't elegant, just a jagged, sloping burrow barely wide enough for a man to crawl through, but it became a lifeline for those who refused to surrender. As the castle's last towers groaned and collapsed, defenders slithered through this desperate passage, emerging bloodied but alive into the foggy Dorset night. What makes this tunnel extraordinary isn't its engineering, it's the raw humanity etched into every inch. Unlike meticulously planned royal escape routes, this one bears the marks of panic, uneven grooves where tools slipped, sections where the ceiling dips abruptly where diggers abandoned precision for speed. Archaeologists later found poignant traces frozen in time, a snapped belt buckle wedged into the wall, likely torn free during a frantic scramble, and candle wax dripped in frantic clusters where someone paused to check for pursuing footsteps. The tunnel's exit, concealed beneath the collapsed gatehouse arch, was so well camouflaged that Parliament's troops marched right past it, convinced no one could have survived the destruction. The tunnel's legacy lies in its duality. While it saved lives, it also marked the end of an era. Corfe, once a symbol of royal defiance, never rose again. Its ruins and this rough-hewn passage became a quiet monument to resilience in the face of inevitability. Local shepherds later reported strange sights near the tunnel's exit, tattered banners fluttering in windless air, the distant clang of swords long rusted away. Whether folklore or fancy, these tales speak to the tunnel's enduring power as a place where history refuses to fade. Now, turn to a passage that defies explanation, a tunnel with no clear purpose, its builders' intentions lost to time. Beneath Berg-Eltz in Germany, a perfectly circular shaft plunges straight down through solid rock, its walls polished smooth as glass. No ladder notches, no torch brackets, just an abyss that seems to swallow the light. What secrets does this void guard, and why would anyone carve such a thing? Peveril Castle's hidden tunnel doesn't whisper its secrets, it guards them with the stubborn silence of centuries. Carved into the rugged limestone of England's Peak District, this passage defies explanation, its purpose lost to time like a page torn from history. Unlike the meticulously documented escape routes of royal fortresses, this tunnel leaves no paper trail, no chronicler's note, just a gaping void of speculation. Was it a smuggler's highway threading beneath the castle to bypass watchful eyes, a covert path for spies during the turbulent Barons' Wars, or perhaps something more primal, an ancient cave system repurposed by medieval hands? The theories multiply, but the stones refuse to confirm a single one. What makes this tunnel so tantalizing is its sheer incongruity. While most castle passages served clear strategic roles, Peveril's wins aimlessly, doubling back on itself in sections before terminating abruptly in a natural cavern. Archaeologists have found none of the usual markers, no torch brackets, no defensive grooves for barricades, not even the wear patterns of frequent use. Yet its construction is undeniably deliberate, the walls too smooth for erosion, the ceiling vaulted with precise stonework, the tunnel's most baffling feature. A vertical shaft plunging 20 feet into darkness, its bottom filled with centuries of accumulated debris including fragments of Venetian glass and Spanish coins, clues that hint at a bustling underground trade. Local legends only deepen the enigma. Folktales speak of a phantom market that convened in the tunnel during lunar eclipses, where shadowy figures traded goods too illicit for daylight. Another story tells of a knight who entered the passage in 1299 and emerged decades later, his armor rusted but his beard untouched by time. While these tales are pure fantasy, they reflect the tunnel's uncanny ability to resist categorization. Even modern technology falters here. Ground-penetrating radar reveals branching paths that collapse upon excavation, as if the earth itself conspires to keep the mystery intact. Perhaps the most compelling clue lies in the castle's geography. Perched atop a sheer cliff, Peveril was virtually impregnable, yet its tunnel emerges near a forgotten ford in the River Hope, a crossing point for medieval wool smugglers. This proximity fuels one historian's controversial theory, that the tunnel wasn't built by the castle's nobles at all, but by a shadowy guild of merchants who bribed masons to carve them a backdoor to wealth. Supporting this idea are ledgers from nearby Chesterfield, documenting unexplained shipments of Derbyshire lead that bypassed royal taxes for years. The tunnel's true story may never be known, and that's precisely what makes it unforgettable. In a world where history often feels neatly catalogued, Peveril's passage remains a stubborn blank space, a reminder that the past keeps some secrets jealously. Now prepare for a tunnel that didn't just defy explanation, but defied nature itself. A passage where water flowed upward and gravity itself seemed to surrender. Conwy Castle's tunnel isn't just a relic. It's a working masterpiece of medieval engineering, as functional today as it was 7 centuries ago. Tucked within the fortress's 9-meter-thick walls, this passage defies time, its arched ceiling and smooth stone steps showing barely a crack despite enduring wars, sieges, and centuries of coastal weather. What makes it extraordinary isn't just its survival, but its precision. The tunnel's builders used locally quarried limestone, carefully layered to distribute weight and resist erosion, while subtle grooves in the floor channeled rainwater away, preventing the dampness that doomed so many other hidden routes. Even the torch brackets remain intact, their wrought iron barely rusted, as if waiting for the next flicker of flame. This wasn't just an escape route, it was a lifeline woven into the castle's very bones. Unlike narrow, claustrophobic passages carved in haste, Conwy's tunnel stretches wide enough for 2 armored men to walk abreast, its walls bearing the marks of countless hurried footsteps. Historians believe it served dual purposes, allowing defenders to reinforce vulnerable gatehouses during attacks, while also offering royalty a discreet exit to the nearby quay. The real stroke of genius, its entrance, concealed behind a pivoting section of the chapel's stone pews, a feature so seamless that even castle staff occasionally lost track of its location during routine cleanings. Modern engineers marvel at the tunnel's durability. The mortar, mixed with crushed seashells for flexibility, has outlasted modern concrete, and the ceiling's slight upward curve disperses stress exactly as Gothic architects intended. During recent restorations, workers discovered something astonishing. The original builders left behind a series of chisel marks near the exit, not random scratches, but precise measurements and angles, a medieval blueprint etched into the stone itself. It's as if they wanted future generations to understand their craft. Today, visitors can walk the tunnel's entire length, their fingers brushing the same walls that once guided fleeing princes and desperate messengers. The air still carries a whisper of salt from the distant sea, unchanged since the 13th century. This passage doesn't just connect spaces, it connects eras, proving that true craftsmanship never goes obsolete. Now, shift your gaze to a tunnel where survival wasn't about stone, but silence the secret route of a king who turned captivity into cunning. Lancaster Castle's tunnel wasn't carved by engineers or masons. It was clawed into existence by sheer desperation, one agonizing handful of dirt at a time. Picture the year 1487, Henry Beaufort, Duke of Somerset, languishing in a cell after the Battle of Bosworth, his fate sealed by the new Tudor regime. The stone walls offered no pity, but beneath the flagstones, something extraordinary was taking shape. For months, the Duke's loyal servants, disguised as laborers delivering bread, had smuggled in tools hidden in loaves, a spoon, a broken dagger, even a makeshift chisel forged from a smuggled nail. Each night, while guards dozed, Beaufort scraped at the earth, his progress measured in inches. The tunnel's ceiling sagged dangerously low, its walls slick with groundwater, but it inched forward like a worm through the castle's foundations. What makes this escape legendary isn't just the Duke's survival, it's the audacity of its execution. The tunnel emerged not in some distant forest, but directly into the castle's own latrine ditch, a place so foul that sentries avoided it. Crawling through filth, Beaufort vanished into the night, his absence unnoticed until dawn. By then, he was already aboard a fishing vessel bound for France, his clothes swapped with a peasant's rags. The tunnel's success became a whispered legend among prisoners for centuries, proof that even in the darkest pits, hope could dig its own path. archaeologists rediscovered the passage during 19th century renovations, finding chilling evidence of its creation. The walls bore not just tool marks but fingernail grooves where the Duke had clawed at stubborn rocks. A rusted spoon, twisted from prying stones, lay abandoned in the muck. Most poignant, a single pearl button from Beaufort's doublet, lost in his frantic crawl to freedom. This tunnel wasn't just an escape route, it was a middle finger to tyranny, proof that no cage is truly absolute when ingenuity meets sheer stubborn will. Now shift from desperation to divinity, a tunnel where faith and stone intertwined. Beneath Glastonbury Abbey, a passage said to be blessed by saints themselves offered sanctuary to those fleeing persecution, its walls humming with whispered prayers. Fountains Abbey's tunnel wasn't just an escape route. It was a sacred act of defiance, carved in shadow to preserve light. Picture the year 1539. The air thick with the scent of crumbling incense as King Henry VIII's commissioners ransacked the cloisters, their hammers reducing stained glass to glittering shards. Beneath the chaos, a handful of monks moved with quiet purpose. The altar, its marble facade chipped by zealots searching for hidden relics, concealed something far more precious, a narrow shaft plunging into the earth. One by one, the brothers slipped through, their rough wool habits snagging on the uneven stone as the tunnel swallowed them whole. The passage, barely wide enough for a man to crouch, twisted like a penitent's prayer before emerging in a hazel thicket half a mile distant, a green sanctuary where the abbey's treasures could be smuggled away under cover of darkness. What sets this tunnel apart isn't just its ingenuity, but its spiritual symbolism. The monks didn't merely dig. They consecrated the passage as sacred ground, etching crosses into the walls at intervals and leaving tiny recesses for votive candles. Archaeologists later found traces of beeswax still clinging to these niches, along with fragments of vellum psalms hastily scrawled in charcoal, likely recited during escapes. The tunnel's construction itself became an act of devotion. Local lore claims the soil refused to collapse during digging, as if blessed, and that the first monk to crawl its length reported hearing angelic chanting in the darkness. Whether miracle or myth, these stories reveal how the brothers transformed desperation into faith made tangible. The tunnel's rediscovery in 1882 laid bare the brutal stakes of the dissolution. Beneath layers of collapsed rubble, workers uncovered more than just stones. They found a leather satchel containing a silver chalice wrapped in altar cloth, its base dented from frantic handling. Nearby, the skeletal remains of a young novice, his fingers curled around a rosary, hinted at an escape cut short. These artifacts don't just illustrate survival, they scream it. The chalice wasn't hidden to protect its monetary value, but because it held the abbey's very soul, the vessel that had carried communion wine for generations. That the monks chose to bury their tunnel's entrance beneath the altar, the holiest site in their world, speaks volumes. When faith is outlawed, even the earth becomes a sanctuary. Yet the tunnel's true power lies in its duality. By day, the monks who remained above ground played their parts, surrendering keys, signing recantations, all while knowing their brothers moved like shadows beneath the commissioners' boots. The forest exit, camouflaged by a fallen oak hollowed out to form a tunnel within a tunnel, became a nerve center for resistance. From here, salvaged manuscripts were smuggled to Catholic sympathizers in York, and word spread of secret masses held in caves along the River Skell. This wasn't just survival, it was spiritual guerrilla warfare waged with psalters instead of swords. Today, visitors to Fountains Abbey can still trace the tunnel's outline, a faint depression in the earth near the altar, now marked by a simple brass plaque. The hazel thicket is long gone, replaced by manicured lawns, but stand there at dusk, and you might catch the whisper of something deeper. not ghosts but echoes, of parchment rustling in satchels, of Latin murmured in haste, of faith so unyielding, it literally tunneled through stone. Now prepare for a passage where gold, not God, was the driving force, a tunnel built to safeguard a king's ransom, only to become the setting for one of history's greatest heists. Kronborg Castle's so-called treasure route wasn't just an escape tunnel, it was a lifeline for Denmark's cultural soul, a secret artery pulsing beneath the feet of invading armies. Picture the chaos of 1628, Swedish forces storming the gates, their cannons reducing the castle's grand halls to rubble, while beneath the ballroom's shattered parquet, a desperate convoy of servants and guards moved like ghosts. The passage, its entrance concealed beneath a trapdoor hidden under the king's throne, sloped gently toward the Øresund Strait, where the water whispered against a camouflaged dock. But this wasn't just any hidden harbor, it was a masterpiece of misdirection. The dock's wooden planks could be flipped to resemble rotting debris, while submerged ropes allowed boats to be pulled silently into the current without oars betraying their movement. What makes this tunnel extraordinary isn't just its engineering, it's what it carried. While other passages saved lives, this one saved legacy. Chests of gilded chalices, royal genealogies penned on vellum, even the legendary silver lions that once guarded the throne, all vanished into the tunnel's shadows as smoke choked the castle above. The real stroke of genius, the builders incorporated a series of alcoves along the route, each lined with lead to muffle the clatter of precious cargo. Records suggest the castle steward, a man named Jens Grand, orchestrated the evacuation with chilling precision, timing each trip to coincide with cannon volleys that masked the sound of rolling cartwheels. The tunnel's rediscovery in 1891 rewrote Danish history. Workers repairing the ballroom's foundation struck hollow ground, uncovering not just a passage, but a time capsule of desperation. Rusted iron hooks still hung from the ceiling where lanterns had swung during frantic evacuations, and the walls bore scratch marks from dragged chests. Most poignant, a single child's glove, embroidered with the royal crest, lost in the rush, likely belonging to a young prince whose nursery treasures were prioritized over his playthings. Archaeologists even found traces of wax seals pressed into the earthen floor, their impressions matching known royal decrees, suggesting last-minute documents were smuggled out too. But the tunnel's true legacy lies in its psychological impact. When the Swedes seized Kronborg, they found a castle stripped of its soul, its treasures vanished as if by sorcery. The sheer impossibility of moving so much wealth undetected fueled legends of cursed gold and phantom ships, distractions that only deepened the mystery. Centuries later, historians pieced together the truth. While invaders celebrated their hollow victory, Danish fishermen had quietly ferried the nation's heritage to safety under cover of fog, their boats riding the same currents that once carried Viking longships. The tunnel didn't just preserve objects, it preserved identity, proving that sometimes the greatest victories happen in darkness. Now prepare for our final tunnel, a passage so audacious, it didn't just defy enemies, it defied the very laws of nature. Hidden beneath a fortress where no tunnel should exist, this last marvel redefined the limits of medieval ingenuity. Malbork Castle's tunnel system wasn't just an escape route, it was a subterranean city unto itself, a labyrinth of stone and shadow that redefined the limits of medieval engineering. Imagine standing in the Grand Master's chamber, surrounded by the Teutonic Order's most guarded secrets, while beneath your feet stretched a network so vast it could move armies unseen. This wasn't a single tunnel but a layered web of passages, each serving a distinct purpose. Narrow spy corridors with listening vents carved into chapel walls, supply chutes wide enough to lower barrels of grain from hidden storerooms, and even decoy routes that ended in false walls to waste invaders' time. The genius lay in its adaptability during peacetime. Merchants discreetly transported Baltic amber through these passages to avoid taxes, while in wartime they became the castle's nervous system, shuttling messages and reinforcements between towers under siege. What set Malbork apart was its ruthless efficiency. Unlike other castles where tunnels were afterthoughts, here they were integrated into the original blueprints, their routes mirroring the fortress's grand halls above. Builders used the castle's own weight to their advantage, positioning tunnels along load-bearing walls where the stone was thickest, muffling sound and disguising hollow spaces. The real stroke of brilliance, a series of underwater channels connecting to the Nogat River, allowing boats to glide into submerged docks beneath the castle, their cargoes whisked away through trapdoors before enemies even spotted their sails. Archaeologists have found grooves in these tunnels' floors, not from wear, but from a custom rail system that let defenders move heavy siege weapons between battlements undetected. But the system's crown jewel was its deception tactics. Certain passages were deliberately left half-finished, their rough-hewn walls and collapsed ceilings convincing invaders they'd found an abandoned project. Others featured whispering arches, curved ceilings that carried voices from guard posts to hidden listening chambers, turning the tunnels themselves into surveillance tools. The Order even planted false maps in captured spies' possession, leading rivals into trap-laden dead ends. One such decoy, discovered by Polish forces in 1410, ended in a chamber rigged with iron grates that dropped from above, sealing intruders inside until the tidewater from the river filled the space. The tunnel's legacy endures in modern military strategy. West Point engineers still study their designs, marveling at how medieval builders accounted for ventilation using disguised air shafts modeled after cathedral bell towers, or how they stabilized soft Baltic soil by mixing mortar with crushed pottery for flexibility. Yet for all their ingenuity, the tunnels couldn't outpace Betrayal. When a disgruntled knight revealed the system's key entrances during the 13 Years' War, Malbork's invincibility crumbled overnight. Today, visitors can walk sections of this subterranean marvel, their footsteps echoing where Teutonic commanders once turned shadows into weapons. It's a haunting reminder that even the greatest fortresses have soft underbellies, and that true dominance required mastering not just the world above, but the one below. The sheer audacity of medieval tunnel engineering becomes clear when you realize these builders had nothing more than iron chisels, wooden mallets, and rope pulleys, yet they carved through bedrock with the precision of modern drill bits. Imagine teams of laborers working by flickering torchlight, their hammers striking in rhythmic unison as they painstakingly chiseled inch by inch through unyielding stone. The real magic wasn't in the tools, but in the minds wielding them. Master masons read rock faces like books, identifying natural fault lines to exploit and avoiding unstable layers that could collapse mid-dig. In Wales' Conwy Castle, engineers left behind a clue to their genius: deliberately angled chisel marks, showing how they followed a vein of softer sandstone between granite layers, turning a backbreaking task into a manageable one. Reinforcement was where physics met craftsmanship. Wooden beams weren't just slapped into place, they were carved with interlocking joints and soaked in vinegar to resist rot, as seen in Dover Castle's siege tunnel. For stone arches, masons employed the same principles used in cathedral construction, each wedge-shaped voussoir carefully tapered to distribute weight outward. At Berg-Hohenzollern, archaeologists found arches where the keystone alone weighed over 300 pounds, lifted into position using a makeshift derrick of lashed-together timbers. The true test of their skill, many of these supports still hold firm after 7 centuries, outlasting modern concrete. Secrecy was woven into every step of construction. At Château de Chinon, workers were reportedly divided into isolated teams: diggers who never saw the masons reinforcing their work, and mortar mixers kept ignorant of the tunnel's ultimate destination. Some lords took paranoia further. Records from Warwick Castle suggest laborers were paid with silver melted into crude coins, leaving no paper trail of their employment. The most ingenious deception came from Malbork Castle, where engineers disguised tunnel excavation as well digging, dumping the excess soil into the actual wells to avoid suspicious piles of earth. What's often overlooked is how these builders harnessed nature itself. In Scotland's Craigmillar Castle, they capitalized on natural caves, expanding them with strategically placed gunpowder blasts, a rare early use of explosives. Airflow was managed through hidden vents disguised as drainage channels, while groundwater became an ally rather than an obstacle. At Mont Saint-Michel, builders incorporated tidal patterns into their design, ensuring the passage drained completely at low tide. These weren't just holes in the ground, they were dialogues with the landscape where human ingenuity danced with geology's constraints. The final marvel lies in the tunnel's endurance. Unlike modern constructions reliant on steel and synthetic materials, these passages adapted to their environments. The slight flexibility of wooden beams allowed them to shift during earthquakes, while lime mortar actually grew stronger over centuries as it slowly recrystallized. At Crac des Chevaliers, a Crusader fortress in Syria, tunnels survived not just sieges, but a devastating earthquake in 1200 that toppled the surface buildings. That's the untold brilliance of medieval engineering structures designed not just for their time, but for eternity's unforgiving gaze. The legacy of these tunnels stretches far beyond their stone walls, their silent witnesses to centuries of human cunning, desperation, and resilience. While many have crumbled into obscurity, swallowed by landslides or repurposed as modern drainage systems, a fortunate few survive almost untouched. Take the tunnels of Château de Chinon, where the grooves worn into steps by fleeing royalty still gleam under flashlight beams, or the echoing passages of Conwy Castle, their torch brackets eerily intact as if waiting for the next hurried escape. These preserved corridors aren't just architectural marvels, they're time capsules offering raw, unfiltered glimpses into the medieval mindset. Every chisel mark, every soot stain tells a story of rulers who understood that survival often depended on outthinking, not just outbuilding, their enemies. Preservation efforts today are as meticulous as the tunnel's original construction. At Warwick Castle, laser scans map every millimeter of its dungeon escape route, revealing subtle tool patterns that hint at the laborers' techniques. In Slovenia's Prajama cave system, humidity sensors and 3D modeling protect the fragile limestone from modern foot traffic. But the real challenge lies in balancing access with conservation. Some tunnels, like Edinburgh's cramped artery used by Mary, Queen of Scots, can only accommodate timed tours with strict visitor limits. Too many breaths and centuries-old mortar risks dissolving in the moisture. Others, like the partially flooded passages beneath Mont Saint-Michel, remain off-limits except to divers equipped with specialized gear to navigate the tidal labyrinth. What makes these preservation projects extraordinary isn't just the technology, it's the dedication to context. Archaeologists at Caerphilly Castle didn't merely reinforce its treacherous betrayal tunnel, they recreated the torchlight conditions of its last use, discovering how shadows exaggerated its deadly drop-offs. At Bran Castle, historians collaborated with acoustics experts to prove that Vlad the Impaler's passage amplified screams intentionally, weaponizing sound itself. These aren't just repairs, they're dialogues with the past, peeling back layers of medieval psychology. The fascination these tunnels inspire today speaks to something deeper than historical curiosity. They remind us that power has always been fragile, that even the mightiest walls have hidden vulnerabilities. Modern visitors crawling through Malbork's spy corridors or tracing Henry Roman VIII escape route at Windsor aren't just touring ruins, they're experiencing the primal thrill of the hunt and the hunted. Preservation ensures these lessons endure, that innovation thrives under pressure, that geography can be rewritten, and sometimes the boldest moves happen in darkness. Perhaps most poignantly, these tunnels force us to confront what endures. Dynasties fell, castles became rubble, but the desperate ingenuity carved into these passages outlasted them all. The child's fingerprints in Stirling Castle's nursery tunnel, the wine stains in Blarney's spy corridor, these intimate traces humanize figures otherwise frozen in tapestries or history books. As long as these stones stand, they'll whisper the same truth. Survival isn't just about strength, but the willingness to slip unseen through the cracks. From daring escapes to tragic betrayals, these tunnels weren't just architectural feats, they were lifelines etched in stone, each one whispering secrets of a world where power balanced on a knife's edge. Consider the sheer audacity of rulers who commissioned them. Kings digging beneath their own thrones, queens vanishing through chapel floors, children crawling to freedom under the weight of dynasties. These passages didn't just defy enemies, they defied fate itself, turning castles from gilded cages into labyrinths of possibility. Take the contrast between Warwick's dungeon tunnel, where prisoners scraped their way to liberty, and Chenonceau's velvet-lined corridor, where lovers slipped past courtly scrutiny. Both were acts of rebellion, one born of raw survival, the other of desire, yet each proves that stone walls could never fully contain human ingenuity. What lingers most isn't just the engineering brilliance, but the humanity stamped into every chisel mark. The child-sized fingerprints in Stirling's tunnel, the lost pearl button in Lancaster's muck, these aren't artifacts, they're heartbeats frozen in time. Even the tunnels that failed, like Malbork's ambushed passage, speak volumes. They remind us that medieval life wasn't just about crowns and conquests. It was about the breathless moments when history hinged on a hidden latch or a moonlit river crossing. The true lesson: vulnerability and power weren't opposites, they were partners in a dance where the next step could mean triumph or ruin. So which tunnel leaves you breathless? Is it Mont Saint-Michel's tide-defying escape, where the sea itself became an accomplice? Or perhaps the Hohenzollerns' generational secret, proving that patience could outlast any siege? Maybe it's Peveril's enigmatic void, a riddle wrapped in limestone. Whatever your pick, these stories aren't confined to the past. They challenge us to look closer at the world around us, because sometimes the most extraordinary truths lie just beneath the surface, waiting for curious minds to uncover them. Drop your favorite in the comments, and let's keep unraveling history's hidden threads together. Until our next adventure, remember, the greatest escapes often begin where the light runs